Hi everyone, we're just going to get started for our design session. So in the room today, this is design session room A, just make sure you're in the right one. What I am going to ask is that everyone comes closer, so we're going to have our virtual attendees join, and it's more an interactive session than a presentation, so please come to the front, sit at one of these many tables, and Olivier is going to host the first design session as well. Join. Yeah, that's what I mean. We try and everyone come towards the front and then bring more chairs in. I don't know if everyone needs to be at a desk, but feel free to move chairs around so that everyone's together. If someone also wants to join the Jitsi link, that would be great for our virtual attendees. So if anyone has a spare laptop, just log into the Jitsi link and people online can join in. No, come to the front. Yeah, come to the front. Move a chair. It's very interactive, so it's a design session. Spare laptop, anyone? Can someone with a laptop volunteer for the Jitsi link if they're not using a laptop? Anyone using a laptop or have a laptop? You got it. Rogers. Yeah, Roger will do it. Okay. I think that's everyone. And then we get started. Come join. Come, we haven't started, so. Yeah, this is a design session for physical events of Zen Summit, so yeah, I've got a lot of people here. Is it okay? Yep, we good? Okay, I will hand over to Olivier, who will start the session.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you, everyone. So it's a lot of people for a design session. Anyway, the idea today is to discuss together what we can do to improve our physical meetings and to basically do more with less. That's the idea I have when presenting this design session. So first, let's start to thanks Kelly and the LF for organizing this event because I think those are really important to physically meet together and to discuss. That's something we must do. There is no question about that. And on my side, I started to think what we can do better to even go further than what we do today. So I know there is a kind of history of having many different Zen events, then deciding to merge into one thing and so on. But I think that's the right time to think about expanding, maybe creating a bit more events, thinking about the physical distribution of the events. So if we add another one, for example, maybe we could keep this one in Europe, but having one more, for example, potentially in the US. So it's up to discussing with, companies that might be interested to host the event. And it's also the fact to think about probably use those events as opportunities to be closer to, academics or some of our users and so on. So probably thinking about hosting those kind of, physical events where we have interesting public that could be there, could attend. I'm thinking about, because we started to work more and more with research labs in France, especially in University of Grenoble, and they have, pretty decent team of researchers and students that are really willing to learn more about Zen, and we think that's a great way to grow our, developer community and so on, because, that's this event like this is really a developer event, which is fine, but I think that's the right opportunity to grow, and add more fresh blood into the community. And I think that could be the right place to do so. So on our side, we started to, dig a bit the topic and think, could we do this maybe at some point? Could we host an event in a Grenoble University? And in fact, it's not, I mean, that's a lot of work, but it's not technically impossible. It could be relatively cheap to do that. So for example, if you compare the pricing, so Kelly gave us, a budget overview on the Zen project, that an event like this is taking a huge part of the budget. So it's maybe time to think about, could we do that in a more efficient manner in terms of investing money with events where it could be maybe ideally covered by the sponsors entirely. So this will have less strain on the Zen budget. And so that's why I'm having this session to discuss that. But just to tell you, at least from Vate's side, we will be happy for next year to host either could be the Zen Summit or another event if it's not the Zen Summit itself. But we are sure that if we do something, at least in Grenoble University, at least maybe next year, we will have many external people that could attend and learn more about Zen and try to provide their own point of view and try to participate and so on and so on, which I think is something really great we have here, but with a bit more external people could be also really interesting. So yes, discussing maybe should we do another event where it should be during Zen board discussion. We've heard that other companies were interested to host those kind of things. Again, maybe elsewhere, maybe in the US. So it's an open discussion. So if there's things you want to discuss about that, your ideas, if you have things, and go ahead. So
we'd just like to say that we did actually used to have lots of local kind of user-oriented Zen events. I forget what they call them, like Zen workshops or something like that. So back when, in addition to Lars, there was Russ. I forgot his last name. Anyway, we basically that's right. So he had the role of Zen evangelist, and he would go around and run a bunch of these different things. So definitely, I think those kinds of things would be good if we can have, if we can get a good kind of a what do you call it, like a good content, as it were, for them, and people who know how to run them and things like that. But
I think we need to discuss also regarding where we do those, because there is a question of, I agree, doing them in the US, but if you look at the community right now, this is why we did it in Cambridge 2 years ago or 3 years ago, 80% of the people were there. Right now, we don't have a lot of contributors anymore in Asia, for example. There were some before, it went down. In the US, well, let's be realistic, the main contributor is there. Well, there are others, I do agree, but right now, our community is mostly focused on Europe. And having events in the US or in Asia right now will probably end up in very few people joining, because we will never get the budget from our companies to join. And we need to keep that in mind, I would say. And then second point is, I was thinking yesterday, but why do we do that in big cities? It's nice for the sightseeing, etc. But if we try to find a facility which is outside of the city, in a countryside, it might be... Yeah, but you do that in... Yeah, but you can take Frankfurt, for example. You go out of... You are not in the center of Frankfurt. The airport is in the countryside anyway. And instead of going to the city, you take a train somewhere else, and you might find cheaper places to organize a summit. But it will... We will...
Close to an airport that's kind of...
Yeah, no, I did not say in the middle of the Sahara anyway, but find a trade.
So maybe say that it should at least be within public it should be possible to get there from a functional airport by train or other public transportation in a somewhat reasonable amount of time. Because a lot of people aren't going to want to have to drive in a foreign country. And that's unfortunately in the EU. That's probably not a very severe requirement, because my understanding is the EU generally has good trains. In the US, that is likely to be largely it. That is going to be a very strict requirement because the EU has the US has horrible public transit, unless you're in a huge city. So, that said, there are some US cities with functional airports that are not huge. Whether everyone we want, whether though it is questionable whether there's like my own city. I'm just going to use my own city as an example. Knoxville, Tennessee, isn't the most expensive, but it's also unclear whether how many people would be comfortable going there. But yeah, in the U.S., there's quite a few states. Sorry to bring up politics, but there are quite a few states where a decent number of people would not be comfortable going because of applicable local laws. In particular, Florida is just a no. That's like, I'm serious.
From Europe. We actually don't know how many people will come to a US event now because there are so many years that we haven't had one, that all the people that will come to the US event, we haven't seen them for years now.
You also have OpenXT guys that are all.
That's right, like Jason and Stuart. Jason is one, but there is also obviously Daniel and Chris. So all of those guys we have been missing this year, last year, and previous year.
I think Chicago was the last
Since Chicago, exactly, and there are others too, and there are also those guys that maybe make a patch or two or a couple of emails every other release, and those kind of people, you don't see them again because they wouldn't take a flight ticket to Europe. So this is, I think, it's still undeniably true that the majority of core developers are from Europe, but then we completely are skipping that part of the community by doing it always here. The other part to Olivier. Point is, so we have a very large campus in San Jose, Silicon Valley, near San Francisco, and we could host it for free. Like, we do have a meeting room that is as big as this, plus other meeting rooms that are as big as the other room altogether, and they will not, AMD will not charge to book it. So we do host conferences that way.
I think that sounds like a great solution. If like, I don't see any reason the Zen community should not take AMD up on that offer.
So I don't think hosting it in a member company is an issue. It's more the logistics of things. If you think about it right now today, how easy it is because Linux Foundation does, the signage, the logistics of CFPs, and I'm not saying we don't do it. I'm just saying that if we do, we need to make sure that everything is easy for everyone because I don't know if you remember, I wasn't there, but we held it in Amazon office, and obviously there could be AV issues, there could be connection issues. We just need to make sure that if we do decide to, we have that. But I'm fully on board with doing it at a member company because when I look at the financial budget and also when I work with the board, I'm very conscious that we need to save costs. I'd like to reinvest those costs into the project and do other things. So I think if we can do more events, especially in the US where we do have those developers, and engage them back into the project, then that's something that is worth doing. Yeah.
He's from Rwanda, Kigali. So he said he had some personal emergency. He left yesterday. I don't know. He said he'll come today. So I said, actually, what make you to come here? He said it is very easy to come here to this place. That's why he made it. Maybe like you guys are talking about someone who is already established, like well with the Zen project organization. Some people like him probably to reach out easily and actually come. Even like someone in future has to come, so it has to be more accessible. I would imagine.
So just one thing with, for example, if we hosted it in America, is budgets. So for someone in Europe to go over all the way to US, well, at least for send server side, we wouldn't be able to send the same amount of people. Like, we have different budgets, and it's not to say that we shouldn't do it. It's more we need to make use of that time. So one suggestion is potentially having 2 separate events, one in US for more US folk and one in Europe. But again, it kind of separates out the developers based on location, and the whole reason why we have Send Summit is getting everyone together in the room and talking. And, you know, we have Jitsi, obviously, for people to listen in, but I think everyone can say that physical summits and being in person together is completely different. You know, you actually make those connections, you get to talk about things. So that's just one consideration.
Keep in mind that, you know, we don't have to do it in the US every year, right? Back in the day when there was no COVID, right, we used to rotate it through, you know, we did Europe, US, Asia. I don't think Asia, like, now there is a very, very small, I think, from what I can tell, community.
There's nobody on the advisory board.
There is nobody on the advisory. So
Well, AMD has people in Asia.
we do have people in Asia, but this is why I'm. Anyway, but my point is if we just rotate it every few years, it doesn't even have to be 50%. Like every 4 years to the US, I think that would make sense, and that's been a long time since we had one. I do, the other point that needs to be accessible, that is true. Like, so if, I think there will be a pretty large amount of people that don't interact often but have heard of Zen, or maybe they were users rather than developers, that will definitely come, and that will, if we hosted it in the Valley, in the Silicon Valley, just because they're there, right, and they use Zen, and they will attend. Similarly, if we did it in Cambridge or other centers, or, you know, development centers.
Yeah, so naturally, this is my first time in the Zen Summit, so I don't know about what happened in the previous years, but if you're looking for a cheap option in Cambridge, let's say, because I know ARM, AWS, and Zen Server are based in Cambridge as well. We, you know, I have some connection with my university where I used to study, Anglia Ruskin University, and I'm pretty sure they could allow us some space to host, because I'm also working there as an associate lecturer at the moment. So I work closely with the faculty, and I know there would be room available to host if you want a cheap option.
How do you spell that so that I can? Anglia University.
Anglia Ruskin University, yeah. Anglia Ruskin University, yeah. Yeah, it's in. Yeah. Anglia. Yeah, sure.
I also wanted to mention, was there like a situation where we also kind of decided or approached the Linux Plumbers Conference developers to have like a Zen micro conference kind of thing? Because basically, I mean, in Plumbers, for those who may not know, the micro conferences, and the idea is that you have like sort of like this design sessions, right? So part of the discussions and developer-specific design sessions can be moved there. I don't know how it works at the Linux Foundations level, like, so maybe Kelly can mention.
Again, with Linux Plumbers, very expensive, much more expensive than this.
Linux Plummet, I don't know the specific amount, but we did consider joining Embedded Summit, so like Open Source Summit, but even that is probably double the amount that we're paying today. You get the benefit of having all those additional people and attendees coming through, and you know, that cross-pollination between projects. But in terms of joining onto other sort of events, it's very hard, especially when you don't have sponsorships. So luckily today we have sponsorships from different member companies that sort of help offset our costs. But if you go to other ones and they're already sponsoring the event as a whole, some project might not get the same budget to go. So we do want to do it, but it's a matter of maybe sometime in the future joining on to events like Embedded. And so, for example, I joined onto the Cepha booth at Embedded World, and that was free, obviously, because it was just me. But if we wanted to do something similar, that's probably something we can consider depending on cost as well.
So one idea is, like, if the main issue is the cost that I see, plus the travel, the logistics, the budgets for the people, So is it okay if we can have it kind of like on a staggered approach? So we can use the same Jitsi thing, and we can co-host it in like 3 or 4 places. So for example, maybe one in Europe, one in US, one in China, maybe one in India. So running at the same time, and it would be like people geographically they can come together to that specific areas. It also don't puts too much budget on a single company, on a single person to get everyone together. So it may be just maybe like 10 or 20 people at one location, 10, 20 people at the other location. Yeah, time. Yeah, that's I think a main thing. So maybe it has to be somewhere a bit non comfortable. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi. So I'm a bit of an outsider, but this discussion rings a bell. So we've been trying from 2019 to organize this in Bucharest, actually, and we were close to do that 3 times. One time, COVID came about. The other time, Ukraine and Russia came about, and the third time, Prague came about. And between Prague and Bucharest, there's no decision. So at least for us, we have all the arrangements. We had the discussion with Deb Giles from Linux Foundation. Everything was and is set in place. All the rooms, everything is available, Wi-Fi, whatever you want. So at any point in time, if you want to organize in Bucharest, that will be the case. The question from my side is, what is going to be the goal? Because I'm guessing here there are 2 items from what I captured from the discussion. One of them is costs. And the other one, from what I see, is, let's say, attracting people or attracting, well, such as myself, from outside the group, because here are the core people, and I think 3 of us from UPB. I think that's kind of it. And my feeling here is that if something like this would be organized in a university or something, as you mentioned earlier, that would be a great place to attract contributors. And for example, I mean, at least in our university, we are very much fond of open source, Google Summer of Code, Unicraft and the others. At some point we had, AWS was also a major player in Bucharest, but they slashed it off in June last year, if I recall, so about a year ago. But there's still a very healthy, let's say, virtualization-focused set of people that can benefit from this. It's industry-alike. There has been 2 months ago something else, Kubernetes Community Days. Happened in Bucharest. It was amazing. 400 people. I wouldn't have imagined that those many people would be there. Zen particular, I wouldn't know. I mean, we had a good connection with FreeBSD. We worked on Beehive. At least university-wise, it's the work on Unicraft. Zen, well, not so much. Now we're making inroads towards that, but it's something to think about. So from my point of view, the question would be, what are the goals? If the goal is let's get together, talk among ourselves, drink some beer, and something that I think any place can do. If it's about attracting contributors, you have to go to the places where people would be willing participants. And without any sort of bad thoughts, I don't think this was such a place. I'm not seeing any. I mean, we came from Romania, but I don't see any other outsiders. I'm not sure how many students are there. I came with 2 students, right? So that's one thing. The other one is, of course, costs. And if there are any others, I wouldn't know that. And just kind of to throw another point, it's a coincidence because I've been doing this, let's say, more community work, so a lot of project now with Unicraft. And I've been spending a lot of time with a lot of items. What we're now going to do is we're going to organize, and the university seems to be very happy about that, a yearly open source conference. The plan is to organize it sometime in late September, when from my initial discussion with Deb at that point, Zen Summit was supposed to be. I'm going to see, we're going to see how that works. So maybe if at some point you talked about Open Source Summit, if this kicks out, that would be one way to tie Zen Summit with that. And you'd have, let's say, 2-3 days and joint with this conference and any sort of other people that are going to join. They're probably going to be mostly from Romania, can be part of this. This can be part of the main Zen Summit track or something also together. Yeah. So I'm a bit of an outsider. If I said something wrong, sorry about that, as I see it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think university is a good place, good incubation hub, I would say, where we can, actually motivate students to 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 have a look at Zen. And if you think Zen was a startup from a university, right, and it's also an open source project, so it can be picked up by anybody. And university will go PhD students, people working on research, who really want to spend time on research and stuff. So I think university and like in my case at ARU, which is in Cambridge, is close, would be a good opportunity to bring benefit also from research side, and cost effective is easy to get through. Is the same city. So yeah, completely agree with you.
One of the things also about hosting at the university is to also have a program which is suitable for beginners as well, right? Because I think with some of the conferences, especially with this one, we don't have beginner one-on-one on certain topics. Now this is a developer conference. Most of the people have already been working in Zen, so it's fine. But I think if you want the new contributors, you need to, especially when there is not a lot of documentation, it's also required to have like a parallel beginner one-on-one on bunch of topics, like how George did for like nested virtualization, just knowledge transfer. I think those sort of sessions would be quite helpful to also bring more new contributors.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think trying to mix developer discussions for subjects which are, well, let's say 75% of the time very advanced and not accessible to beginners, with trying to bring in beginners, that will create a mess. And we should not try to do everything in one step. Helping people to come in, that requires presentations that are adapted to that. Introduce Xen, not go too technical, not have developer sessions on subjects that nobody else than us understand. Well, yeah, everybody can understand, but then there are other subjects. And we need both, but doesn't mean that we have to do both in the same kind of conference. And there is space for both. Having a developer conference for Xen contributors and make the project evolve is one goal. Bringing in more people and make them known is another one. And I don't think we can mix things. It's good if we can, but I don't think that's achievable.
We did once. Who was in Seoul 15 years ago? So we did one time, many years ago, a conference hosted by the University of Seoul in South Korea. Were you there? It was just me out of this group. Okay. And it went exactly how you described, and so the professors encouraged people to attend. So we had a full room, maybe 200 people, one of the biggest, in terms of attendance ever. But also, like Bertrand said, because we didn't tune the topic, it would be like a regular Xen Summit at a university with free attendance for the students. Yes, we got all the students, but I think we retained 0 of them in the community.
Scared them off, probably.
Yeah.
I would just say, I mean, yeah, as he said, we're talking about the developer stuff, and we're talking about kind of outreach, is what thing we would call this. So I definitely think we used to do a lot more outreach, and I think we need to start getting back into that. But it needs someone to sort of take the initiative and make it happen. So
speaking of outreach, I'm looking for people to actually do talks more often. Obviously, I do an aspect of it, going out to different events to increase visibility. But in terms of actually getting new people, I think the goal sort of differentiates. At Zen Summit, it's very specific and it's very technical. But then you want, how can we onboard members, let them know about Zen Project? And with that, that's where, we do have a small budget within Zen Project that if you want to speak locally at a workshop or at a university, that's what we really encourage. So we did one at Cambridge University. Obviously, we're looking to do more of those. We can do things, if you don't want to do it in person, we can do webinars as well. So obviously, this is not just people in the room. Anyone that's not here today, that's also open up. I think as long as you have that outreach and you want to, connect people with Zen, it can be an open topic. That's something that we should start doing as well.
For the topic of newcomers, you said about this new generation of people who will work Zen on Xen. I gladly invite to design session what's exactly about this topic, if this will have room for this. Because most important question is like, right now a lot of people working on all this topic, but who will then next take over this next generation. And this is also a very important topic, as also all this content topics, yeah. And how to motivate younger people for all this maybe not so exciting things from the content. And this all interesting questions, yeah.
So one thing is, like as many of you said, that we want to increase the outreach to the universities, to the students. So I would say that maybe if we keep that goal as a separate from this summit, like we can have this summit for our technical directions, whatever we do in a day-to-day basis with Zen and around Zen. And then there will be a separate session like we have in the Cambridge Uni, a more focused one for the students, which will be easier to explain and easier to onboard new students. I think there the main thing is we can do a webinar or we can do a physical event. The question would be, do we have contacts with those universities and do we get an audience there? When we went to the Cambridge Uni, I think there were quite a few students who came up. So I think that's a good way to like increase the outreach. Yeah. I'll just pass it there and from there.
So from my perspective, I think not really sure about the technical parts of Zen Summit because I'm not primarily a Zen developer. I'm a Cubes developer, but I think one of the big things with Zen is that for someone who's not already familiar with it, there isn't much in the way of a compelling reason to try it. It's like if your use case is just I need to spin up a couple of VMs, people will just use KVM because it already comes with their Linux system, or they'll use Hyper-V if they're on Windows. If they need to commercially, they may well be doing something in the cloud. It's like there's the onboarding path. Like there's much less, from what I can tell, of organic. I found this. I tried this. I like this. Than with other things. Now, like from what I can tell, most non-technical users who are using Zen are using it through Cubes, or maybe OpenXT, and most like new, like not specifically people who have, I think, like for instance, given the large number of bug reports that come from the Cubes world, I think it's likely that Cubes is most of the people who have it use Zen on clients that are willing to talk about it. I don't know if...
Yeah, sorry again. So I just wanted to piggyback on what Stefano and George mentioned. That's totally true. And I would say that having an event with the goal of doing outreach is not the proper way to do it. Because, I mean, even for me here, and I know a bit of Zen, it's still daunting, right? And I would imagine even for someone who's going to take these first steps. However, I mean, I personally, once again, as an outsider, I feel it's very important for any sort of community to outreach. For this, I can offer, let's say, at least from my university experience, some advice on how we can proceed. And at least on my side, because we have a clever bunch of students that are interested in low-level topics, we can make progress in that. But this is something that's not going to happen even if you make a per beginner event, 2 days one, that's still not going to cut it. You need something that's going to be, let's say, month of some sort of mentoring, tutoring, and getting people on board. We're actually doing that with students in our part of the community, but that's one way of doing it. Once again, this is outreach in, let's say, university side of things. If there's going to be outreach in some other places, companies, that's I'm guessing something different. But I would say that having an event in university is primarily for, let's say, marketing. I wouldn't say, what is it? Buzz. I mean, people know about it. Awareness, right? In this project, we do that, so people hear about that. And of course, for developers to come together and talk about that. It's not. I'm not going to think that it's going to benefit so much the community by other people joining. It's going to be good for spreading the word. But for outreaching, that's probably a better way of doing it. Yeah. Could you pass it on, please?
I think that for outreach is better that we try to make Zen talks at other conferences that already have the audience rather than trying to make it ourselves, because it's very unlikely for someone that doesn't know about Zen to join a 2-day Zen event, even if it's user focused. Yeah, they probably don't care. So what we need to do is what we did before when I joined Citrix, to be honest. I did maybe 4 or 5 user-focused talks at CentOS dojos, Open Nebula events, FOSDEM. Those kind of things are where you already have the audience. The audience is there. You just need to deliver it. And that's much more easier, I think.
And I think like the kinds of workshops we've done in the past is like, you know, like a 4-hour afternoon, you know, kind of a thing. So and often co-located with some other kind of event. So yeah. So that would be the kind of thing you'd have to think about. So I mean, you could think about, you know, as you say, like CentOS dojos or something like that. Like here's how to use it on this system. Or, you know, you could talk about here's how you install Zen on a Raspberry Pi, or here's how you do, you know, if you have a little, you know, whatever, an Intel NUC, here's how you install, you know, XP and Gene on it, and this sort of thing. Like, so that sort of thing, I mean, I think, you know, have your own little home server with a Raspberry Pi would be a good way, one good way to get kind of students in. But it probably also, for events like this, we need to be remembering that, like, so last year, for instance, you know, we like to try to have the goal to have this thing, to have industry partners come in to make sure that we have a talks or a track or something like that, which is focused on new industry partners, people who may be thinking about using Zen, who have no idea about their architecture or anything like that and want to learn about it, to make sure that we have those things available. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one idea is if we do end up hosting an event that's someone, you know, company with got connections to university or something, then sufficiently before the event, try and give a talk or something to computer science students at that university to try and just sort of highlight what Zen is and what's that, and say, hey, there's this conference coming up, you might want to come along. Just as a way of sort of getting the word out there a bit, and a bit of an intro to it.
You know, I just wanted to add that, you know, the university kind of approach to allow students to learn has changed a lot in the last few years, and there are different techniques they're adopting to increase the level of engagement. Like one of them is called live briefs. I don't know if you have ever heard of it, but it means like rather than giving an assignment or an in-class test, they give like a kind of case study, which is based on a project that exists. So students can work on their project as a live brief, and then the best project is then, you know, presented to the company itself. Like in the case of ARU, which is the university I'm in touch with, we got live briefs from different companies. I personally last year, because I used to be a student last year, right? And we had an assignment, a live brief from ARM. So I remember I was learning more about microcontrollers, because there was one area we never done as part of a computer science course. And we had someone from ARM coming and teaching us those type of, you know, things. And we used Raspberry Pi as one of practical assignments. And the students were really happy. ARM became very popular among students, and there were so many people applying to, because that's why I know there is an office in Cambridge. So, you know, since Zen actually is a open source project, you know, we can actually try to come up with approaches, right, and to increase the popularity among students. It's something that takes a while. It can be done in just like, you know, one meeting or one session, but we can try and then get some feedback and see what areas we can improve. And then with some feedback from students, academics, who probably have got more experience on how to approach with students, then we can actually come up with that kind of strategy. We could also create a network of university, because I can see there are different universities who can host this. So having a network allows also students to interact with different students from other universities. So, you know, in a long-term future, it's something that could actually take place, I think.
I think we have 2 mics.
Thank you very much. So wrapping up a bit. So what we've seen is, in general, we probably need to, as it was said at multiple times, to get more people and to train the new generation. We have to find the right recipe to, you know, create those events. My personal feeling is we shouldn't have any fear to have more events. I don't think this will dilute, you know, the let's say, how it could be great to have an event. I mean, one is good, but I think we could do more. We could do probably the same thing for, you know, smaller budget. So I think it's doable. But what matters to me, and it was really interesting to see, many different opinion and interesting, discussion, is probably to have, it's a suggestion, but maybe a dedicated channel on our metrics to discuss, the future events and how we want to do them, and maybe having people, getting the initiative to push for something they would think could be great, and then we could discuss that. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle of everything we talked together, maybe not a specific outreach event, maybe not, too specific stuff. But anyway, I think that would be great that we continue this discussion online after the summit to see what we could do next with, the initiative from many people around until we decide something.
Okay, we have 2 mics, so it's good. I think it's just going back to the main question is, what is the goal of the event? If you are doing a Send Summit and you want to do more of those, that needs to be a key event with our key developers. But if we were doing local workshops or universities and how to onboard new users, things like that, I think that can be done quite easily. So like, for example, myself, I've contacted Simone to go and reach out to some students locally to talk about Send as a very basic, just for outreach. But if you're looking at a full-scale sort of Send Summit in America or, hosted by Vate, I think that requires more planning, and we need to narrow down why we're doing the summit first rather than just doing it because, I know for many member companies, you can't just ask to go somewhere. You need a budget. You need a reason why, what you're going to take
We are
away.
very aware about that.
Yeah, so I think key thing is making sure that we separate out the two. Obviously, I think one key takeaway is, I think for our American attendees, that's very key because we don't want to neglect our sort of like people in the States. I know there's quite a few developers working there, and just because there's not a lot there doesn't mean we can't keep doing it, and I think that's something to keep in mind when we look at future events. But don't worry, I am definitely, there's definitely options, and I'm considering that with like board members. Obviously, as a community, you can all suggest things. So I know Unicraft has suggested, hosting at a university. I think all these types of feedback and ideas, they really do help us plan the next one. So yeah, thank you, Olivier, for suggesting a topic.
Welcome.
I think it's very
Thank
useful
you.
discussion. Thanks.